Daggerfall. What else can be said about Daggerfall that hasn't already been said in a 20-minute analysis video, or a 4-hour analysis video if you prefer a channel that has way more credibility than I do on the subject? You already know my opinions of Daggerfall. It is a great game that has been vastly overlooked by modern gamers, but I also understand that this game isn't for everyone, even with the Unity version modernizing many aspects of the game. It still has pretty boring visuals, it has a very simple combat system, and many players like me will complain about the massive length of the dungeons. In fact, the dungeons can get so big that a lot of Daggerfall players treat the game more like a dungeon crawling roguelite than a medieval fantasy life sim. Go through this randomly generated dungeon, kill everything, pick up a bunch of shit, clear the dungeon, leave the dungeon, go sell your shit somewhere, and then get bigger and better items so you can clear the next randomly generated dungeon a bit faster. That alone makes for a timeless and addicting gameplay loop, but what if I told you that there was a game that has this gameplay loop that is way more recent than Daggerfall? A game that shares Daggerfall's unique art style and narrows down its RPG elements to further suit a roguelike game. A game that serves as a great alternative to Daggerfall, yet it only has an average of under 40 players. Well, let me introduce to you Slasher's Keep. This has to be one of the most underrated games I've ever showcased on this channel, and that honestly really annoys me. It's a testament to how Steam's lack of storefront moderation can screw game developers right out of the gate. Because how can you look for hidden gems like these when you have games like Furry Hitler soaking up the Steam charts and then being forgotten the next day after they get their 15 minutes of fame? After seeing it go under everyone's radar, I felt it was fitting to showcase this game as it falls in line with the more recent content that I've been making. You've seen me talk about Daggerfall, you've seen me talk about a roguelike game, at least on a surface level, as I came to find out. Now let's talk about an awesome game that combines both of these together. As previously stated, Slasher's Keep is a dungeon crawler roguelite. You start by creating a character with a fair number of customization options and begin your run at the bottom of the keep in a jail cell. As you exit your cell, you have immediate access to a chest that will drop you a few pieces of starter equipment. This chest will be important later. So you navigate through the floor of the dungeon, killing shit, leveling up, and picking up more gear. Then you find the ladder that leads to the next floor and rinse and repeat until you make it to the final boss. It's a really simple gameplay loop, but there are so many other aspects of this game that make it stand out above the rest, such as its incredibly unique art style. I remarked about how unique Daggerfall Unity's art style was and how it was basically these 2D pixels on a 3D plane. But Slasher's Keep takes that and essentially modernizes it. You have sprites for each NPC, but the angle of the sprites change depending on your camera angle. It creates this hybrid of a cartoonish but 3D art style that I don't think I've ever seen in a game before. The art style plays well into the charm of Slasher's Keep, as there's plenty of dark humor and silliness that happen within its walls. Now that we've addressed the elephant in the room, let's talk about combat. Slasher's Keep uses a combat system that's very similar to the more recent Elder Scrolls games. You have a light attack that's basically just you waggling your fucking weapon around, but you also have charge attacks that change depending on the direction you charge them in. For example, if you move forward and charge a power attack, you'll do this overhead slash, and if you move backwards while you charge a power attack, you'll do a thrust that will lunge you forward. It takes elements from medieval slasher games like Mordhau, where you have to turn towards an enemy's blade to properly block it. You have 4 basic melee weapon categories: short swords, long swords, axes, and maces, and these weapon types all have unique qualities that you can tailor your playstyle towards. Swords are very quick and have a diverse moveset, axes have high crit chance, and maces are the slowest weapon type but also deal the most damage. They also have a lot of knockback power, which you can use to your advantage to knock enemies into walls or spike traps. If you don't want to use a mace but still want to knock away opponents, then you could just whack people with your inventory bag. Most games will just implement a kick for this type of function, but changing it to your bag of junk is a fun and unique change. You also have a handful of wands that can give you some ranged options that are similar to an FPS. Ice wands are basically shotguns, piercing wands are assault rifles, lightning wands are like sniper rifles, you get the point. You can even get a kinetic wand that essentially acts as the gravity gun from Half-Life 2. You can pick up barrels and a bunch of useless items and throw them at opponents and send them fucking flying. All of this makes for a serviceable combat system, but this system is made even better by Slasher's Keep's extensive perk system. Every character starts with a special perk that's unique to the race you choose at the beginning. After every other level, you'll receive a point that you can use to permanently learn a perk of your choosing. What's interesting about this is that oftentimes the equipment you pick up will have a perk that you can add to your collection, so long as you have an available point to spend. What may be brushed off as a useless piece of shit may actually be a lot more valuable because it has a perk that you've never seen before. These perks can also stack, so if you have a pair of gloves that have a bloodlust perk that gives you a damage and experience bonus if you keep up a kill streak, then that effect will be a lot stronger if you have other pieces of equipment with that perk, and it also stacks with the perk points that you permanently learn. This also makes it a viable option to perma-learn a ton of points into one specific perk and get a much stronger effect instead of branching out and perma-learning a wide variety of perks. Look at all these player choices, man. We're so spoiled. And to think that this is all in a game that has been ignored by so many players. That's what I gotta say to that, you bitches. It doesn't end there, however, as this perk system can also really help you out when you start crafting your own weapons. That's right, Slasher's Keep has a forge system. And I'm not talking about adding a fire effect to your sword and giving it a fancy little name and that's it. I'm talking about changing the blade, the crossguard, the pommel, throwing a bunch of random gems onto your weapon that will give you specific perks and other attribute effects. You can order all these parts in whatever order you please, you can rotate them, and all of these parts are things that you can find scattered throughout the keep. As you play through the game, you'll be making tough decisions as to whether or not you should sacrifice precious inventory space to keep that cool looking handle in the hopes of finding a forge and snapping together all of your parts to make a badass weapon. While we're on the subject of risk versus reward gameplay, I think this game does a great job of implementing that with a unique mechanic that is the item chute. You're going to be carrying around a lot of shit in this game, and there's no way to increase your inventory space, so those inventory slots are precious. You'll find yourself taking 15 minutes every floor rearranging all the stuff in your bag like it's Leon Kennedy's attaché case, just so you can find one more longsword to stuff into your bag so you can go and sell that to the very suspicious mole man merchant that desperately needs a Mucinex.
You something to kill people with?
The weapons you pick up will be very important during your run, as most of the damage you're going to be doing will be from your equipment rather than your perks. A problem is, you lose everything in your inventory when you die. That is, until you find an item chute that you can use to throw any item into. These items then get tossed all the way down to the bottom and into that chest you open at the beginning. This gives a player even more options with the equipment they obtain. You can buy that shiny new axe solely for the purpose of leeching a perk off of it, or you can throw it into the item chute so your next run can be a little bit easier. That mace you just crafted looks really cool. Does a lot of fucking damage and it's got some nice shiny little gems on it. How about instead of dying and losing it forever, you throw it into the item chest, so when you start the next run, you can one-tap everyone and get back to where you died very easily. The item chute is also oddly satisfying because it gives you a visual indicator of your progression. You'll start the game getting just a few weapons and pieces of armor, but as your runs take you further up the floors, you'll be throwing more and more items into the chutes, so when you start your next run, your starter chest will eventually be spitting out items like a Diablo 2 loot pinata. But Jacob, if this is a roguelite game, what does it have for replay value? It's a roguelite game. It has replay value, so shut the fuck up, you imaginary straw man that I created to use as a segue into the next section. Players will have a ton of secrets to discover, a couple of locked races that can give you some unique perks to mess around with. There's an alchemy system that was recently added to the game where you can throw in a bunch of consumables and get a special item out of it. There's a limited questing system that gives you a basic objective like luring enemies into traps, and it can reward you with permanent perks and other goodies. You can tailor the length of the game to your liking, so if you want to hop on for a quick run, you can shorten the amount of floors to get to the end faster. There's a ton of content here, and it's especially impressive when you consider that this is a solo developed game that runs for just above $10. So yeah, that's pretty much what the game is about. This is probably going to be a shorter video than I would probably have imagined, but this game is fairly simple. The game isn't unnecessarily bloated, it knows what it wants to be, and it sets out to accomplish that. And I think it does so in spades. Hats off to Damien Schloter for making a game that captures that old school nostalgia while also modernizing the game and making it a lot more interesting for modern audiences. Hopefully I did a good job of pitching this game to you guys, and I hope this game gets a lot more players. It is criminally underrated if I say so myself. Hey, thanks for watching the video in its entirety, and if you watch my other videos and subscribe to my channel, then thank you very much. I try to get a new video out every month, but I've been really busy with personal issues. I have my music project that I'm working on, so that takes up a lot of my free time. And I also have another project that I really needed to fact check and research a bit more, so I put that on the back burner so I can make this one. I apologize for the release schedule. I'm still kind of new to this, so thank you for sticking around and watching my videos anyway. Yeah, that's about it. Peace.
Basting and Basting begat Lorm, and Lorm begat Borcarvener, and Borcarvener begat Saint Ben, and Ben begat Jarnis, and Jarnis begat Chol, and he begat Minkaros, and Minkaron begat Jonathan.